Welcome to subscribe.
You know those moments when a whole room just stops? Like somebody hit pause on a remote control and every single person in the room is holding their breath. That's what happened at Pennington Manufacturing that Thursday afternoon. 3 seconds. Maybe 4. But it felt like an hour. I'd been working there 6 years. 6 years of coming in early, staying late, eating my sad little tuna sandwich at my desk while the big shots went out for 2-hour lunches at the club. You know the club. Every town's got one. The place with the green leather chairs where the important men sit around talking about golf swings and tax breaks. I wasn't important. I was Maggie. Just Maggie from accounting. The single mom who always said yes. Yes to overtime. Yes to covering for Stacy when her migraines hit. Yes to fixing Frank's spreadsheets because the man couldn't tell a debit from a donut. So when I slid that envelope across the conference table, nobody expected much. Probably thought I was asking for a raise. Maybe a few extra vacation days. Arthur Pennington certainly thought so. The old man didn't even look up at first. Just kept fiddling with that fancy gold pen of his, the one that leaked ink all over everything. I'd seen him ruin 3 shirt pockets with that pen. Never learned. Men like Arthur never do. "What's this, sweetheart?" he said. Sweetheart. 6 years and he still called me sweetheart. "You wanting time off for the little guy's baseball game?" I didn't answer. Just pushed the envelope another inch across the polished oak table. He sighed. Put down the pen. Made this big show of opening the envelope like he was doing me some kind of favor. First thing he pulled out was my resignation letter. Typed. Single-spaced. 1 sentence. I, Margaret Chen, resign from Pennington Manufacturing effective immediately. He raised an eyebrow. Well now. That's all he said. Well now. Like he'd just heard mildly interesting news at the barber shop. Frank, sitting 2 chairs down, leaned forward. Poor Frank. Arthur's nephew. The company's CFO. A man whose only real talent was being related to the right person. He had that look on his face, the look of a golden retriever who knows someone's about to get yelled at and just hopes it isn't him. "Everything okay, Maggie?" Frank asked. I still didn't speak. Arthur unfolded the second piece of paper. My paycheck. $900. Exactly. After taxes, after deductions, after the so-called wellness program contribution that Arthur had dreamed up 2 years ago, a program that supposedly gave us gym discounts and mental health resources but somehow never actually worked when you tried to use it, I took home $900. Every 2 weeks. $1,800 a month. $21,600 a year. To raise a kid. To pay rent. To keep the lights on and food in the fridge and hope the car didn't break down because the car breaking down meant choosing between the mechanic and the dentist, and my boy needed braces. You want to know what kicked this whole thing off? The braces. That's what did it. 2 weeks ago. Tuesday morning. I'm sitting in Dr. Harmon's office, looking at the estimate. $5,000. $5,000 with insurance. And I'm doing the math in my head, the way I always do, the way every single mom does, adding and subtracting and coming up short every single time. Mrs. Chen? The receptionist had this look. Pity mixed with impatience. We do have payment plans. Payment plans. Right. Another $150 a month I didn't have. And then, while I'm sitting there, staring at the numbers, feeling like the worst mother in the world because I couldn't afford to fix my kid's crooked smile, something clicked. You ever have that? That moment when your brain connects 2 things that should have been connected years ago but somehow weren't? It was the wellness deduction. $40 per paycheck. That's what Arthur took out for his phantom wellness program. $40. Times 26 pay periods. Times 2 years. I did the math right there in the dentist's office, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold the pen. $2,080. That's what the company had taken from me. From every single employee. And for what? A gym membership that didn't work. A mental health hotline that rang to a disconnected number. But that wasn't what broke me. I'd been dealing with Arthur's penny pinching for years. We all had. The man once bragged at a company picnic, a picnic we had to pay for our own hot dogs, by the way, that he'd saved the company 17 cents per employee by switching toilet paper brands. 17 cents. He was proud of 17 cents. No, what broke me was the number on my paycheck stub. Not the dollar amount. The code. Right there, next to my employee ID. A 4-digit number I'd seen 1,000 times but never really looked at. 0442. I'd been processing payroll data for 3 years at that point. Part of my job was maintaining the archive, going through old records, digitizing paper files, making sure everything was backed up. Boring work. The kind of work nobody else wanted to do. But I liked it. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't call you sweetheart and then rob you blind. 3 months ago, I'd found something in the basement storage room. A cardboard box. Unmarked. Stuffed behind a broken filing cabinet. Inside were old payroll ledgers from the 1980s. Handwritten. Pages yellow and crumbling. I almost threw them out. Almost. But something made me flip through them. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was the God I stopped believing in after my husband walked out giving me one small break. Page after page of names. Dates. Hours worked. Wages paid. And in the margins, little notes. Little codes. 4-digit numbers. 0442, Linda Kowalski. Hired March 14, 1983. Terminated September 7, 1985. Except she wasn't terminated. I checked. I pulled the official records. Linda Kowalski resigned according to the HR files. But these handwritten ledgers told a different story. A story about hours that didn't add up. Overtime that disappeared. Wages that were adjusted. And in the margin, in Arthur Pennington's unmistakable cramped handwriting, 0442 settled. Full release signed. $4,200. That was a lot of money in 1985. But it wasn't the amount that stuck with me. It was the next page. The same code. 0442, different employee. A man named Robert Chen, no relation, but the name jumped out at me. Hired 1986. Was fired 1988. Same margin note, 0442. $3,800. And then another. And another. And another. 0442 was Arthur's secret code for hush money. Small amounts. Never more than $5,000. Enough to make problems go away without raising red flags. Employees who noticed their paychecks were light. Employees who had the nerve to ask questions. Employees who got sick and actually tried to use their health insurance, only to find out they'd been quietly dropped from the plan. I found 12 of them. 12 people over 40 years. 12 payouts totaling less than $60,000. Pocket change to a man worth millions. On the last page, in the back of the ledger, there was one more entry. No name. No date. Just a number. 0442, current, 347 employees. Wellness retention estimate, $72,280 annually. He was still doing it. Still using the same code. Still skimming from people who couldn't afford to fight back. I copied everything. Every page. Every note. I made 3 sets. One in my apartment. One in a safe deposit box at a bank across town. And one with a friend who promised not to open it unless something happened to me. Then I waited. For 3 months, I waited. I watched Arthur strut around the office, calling us his family. I watched him give speeches about loyalty and sacrifice. I watched him park his Mercedes in his reserved spot right next to the front door while the rest of us hiked from the back lot in the rain. And I kept the secret. Until the braces. Until the $5,000. Until the receptionist's pitying smile. Because here's the thing. Arthur Pennington could have given me a raise. He could have actually funded the wellness program he'd been deducting from my paychecks. He could have been the generous father figure he pretended to be at every Chamber of Commerce dinner. But he didn't. Because he never does. Because men like Arthur only understand one thing. Taking. Taking and taking until there's nothing left. So I slid that envelope across the table. I watched him unfold my paycheck. I watched his eyes scan the numbers. And then I watched his face change. It wasn't anger. It wasn't confusion. It was fear. Pure, cold, gut-twisting fear. Because he'd seen it. Right there on the stub. Next to the wellness deduction. The code I'd typed in myself when nobody was looking. 0442, his mouth opened. No sound came out. The room went silent. The kind of silent where you can hear the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The kind of silent where someone's stomach growling sounds like thunder. Arthur Pennington looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in 6 years. And what he saw wasn't sweetheart anymore. Where? His voice cracked. He had to start over. Where did you get this number? I didn't answer. I just stood up. Smoothed my skirt. Gathered my purse, the fake leather one from Target that had started peeling 6 months ago. I'll be at my desk, I said. Quiet. Calm. Like I was ordering coffee. You've got until 5 o'clock to decide how this ends. Then I walked out. Past Frank's confused face. Past Stacy's terrified eyes. Past the big brass plaque in the lobby that said Pennington Manufacturing, founded 1977, built on family values. Family values. Sure, Arthur. Let's talk about family. Let's talk about Linda Kowalski, who put a gun in her mouth after you ruined her. Let's talk about Robert Chen, who died of a heart attack at 47 with no health insurance because you'd quietly canceled his policy. Let's talk about the single mom in accounting who found your little black book and decided she wasn't going to be another 0442. Behind me, I heard his gold pen clatter to the floor. He didn't pick it up. The door hadn't even clicked shut behind Maggie before Arthur Pennington's hand shot to his desk phone. His fingers were trembling so bad he misdialed twice. Frank. My office. Now. And don't tell anyone where you're going. He didn't wait for an answer. Just slammed the receiver down and stared at that payroll slip like it was a rattlesnake coiled on his mahogany desk. 0442, 4 numbers that had been buried for 38 years. He grabbed his gold pen, tried to twist the cap back on, couldn't find it. It had rolled under the credenza. He left it there. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Frank walked in 2 minutes later, red-faced and breathing heavy from hurrying down 2 flights of stairs. He was still wearing that confused expression from the meeting, like a golden retriever who'd seen his owner kick a puppy and couldn't figure out why. Uncle Arthur, what the hell just happened in there? Who is that woman? Why did you shut the door? Frank shut it. Lock it. The click of the lock sounded way too loud in that big corner office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and its photos of Arthur shaking hands with 2 governors and a senator. Arthur jabbed his finger at the payroll slip. Look at this. Look at the employee code. Frank leaned over, squinting. He'd left his reading glasses at his own desk. Yeah, it's Maggie Chen. New girl in accounting, been here about 3 years. I processed her last pay adjustment myself 6 months ago. What's the big deal? Not her name, you idiot. The code. Bottom right corner. Frank pulled the paper closer. There it was. 0442, handwritten in blue ink, but not Maggie's handwriting. Somebody from payroll had scribbled it years ago when they'd first set up her file, copying it from some older system. I don't get it, Frank said. It's just a file reference number. We used those before the software upgrade in 16. So what? Arthur's face went a color Frank had never seen before. Not red with anger, not pale with shock. Gray. Like old newspaper. She knows, Arthur whispered. Knows what? Don't play stupid with me, Frank. Not today. I want to know how she found out about 0442. Because only 3 people in this entire company know what that number means. Me. You. And a dead woman. Frank's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Uncle Arthur, I swear to God, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never seen that number before in my life. Then how does some 32-year-old single mother from accounting walk into my boardroom, slide a $900 paycheck across the table, and point to a 40-year-old code like she's holding a loaded gun? The question hung in the air. Frank was starting to sweat now, and not just from the stares. Maybe somebody else in payroll saw it? Some old-timer who remembered? Nobody remembers. I made sure of that. Arthur stood up, walked to the window, and stared down at the parking lot. His silver Lincoln was parked in its usual spot, right next to the handicapped spaces he'd insisted on reserving for himself even though there wasn't a damn thing wrong with his legs. Did you talk to her? He asked, not turning around. Did you say something you shouldn't have? Maybe after a few drinks at the company picnic? You always did get loose-lipped after 3 beers. Come on, Uncle Arthur. I barely said 10 words to Maggie Chen in 3 years. She keeps her head down, does her work, goes home to her kid. That's it. Arthur turned around slowly. Then how does she know about Linda Kowalski? Frank blinked. Who? The name hit Frank like a cold wind. He'd heard it somewhere, years ago, whispered at a family Christmas dinner and then never again. Something about a woman who'd worked at the factory and then just disappeared. Linda Kowalski, Arthur said, the name coming out like broken glass. First employee I ever hired when I opened this place in 77. Good worker. Smart. Too smart. Started asking questions about overtime pay discrepancies. Wouldn't let it go. So I handled it. Handled it how? I gave her an envelope with 3 months' pay and a new employee code on a termination form. 0442, it was my private system. Anybody who made trouble, anybody who got too close, got 0442. They signed the papers, took the check, and disappeared. Worked every time. Except Linda. Arthur sat back down, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. She didn't take the check. Said she was going to the labor board, the newspaper, the IRS. So I had to make sure she couldn't. Frank felt his stomach drop. What did you do? I didn't do anything. I just let her know what would happen if she talked. Her husband's business loan. Her mother's green card application. Her kid's college fund. I had connections back then. I still do. 2 weeks later, she put a shotgun in her mouth in her own garage. Her 12-year-old son found her. The office was so quiet Frank could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. My God, Uncle Arthur. Don't you dare judge me. Everything I built, everything this company is, started with those decisions. You think that country club membership your wife loves so much is paid for with clean money? You think the bonus I gave you last Christmas came from honest bookkeeping? Don't be naive, Frank. We're in this together. You've been cooking the payroll deductions for 5 years. If I go down, you go down. Frank's face went white. I only did what you told me to do. Those fake health plan deductions, the payroll rounding, you said it was just temporary. You said you'd stop. Well, now somebody's trying to stop it for us. And I need to know if you're the one who opened your mouth. I didn't. I swear on my mother's grave. Your mother's still alive, Frank. I know. That's how serious I am. Arthur stared at him for a long moment. The clock on his desk ticked. 3:47 p.m. 1 hour and 13 minutes until Maggie's deadline. Get out, Arthur said finally. But don't leave the building. And if I find out you're lying to me, Frank, I'll feed you to the wolves before they ever get to me. Family or not. Frank stumbled out of the office, his tie crooked, his shirt soaked through under the arms. He didn't see Maggie sitting at her desk 3 hallways away. Didn't see her watching him through the glass partition with calm, patient eyes. She'd been counting on this. Arthur Pennington's greatest weakness wasn't greed, it was paranoia. The man had spent 40 years covering his tracks, and it had made him trust nobody. Not even his own blood. Maggie glanced at her phone. 2 text messages from her neighbor saying her son Noah was fine, they were making mac and cheese, not to worry. She texted back a heart emoji and put the phone away. Then she got up and walked to the break room. Stacy was there, like she always was at 3:50 p.m., watering the dying ivy plant on the windowsill. The leaves had gone brown at the edges, and no matter how much water she gave it, it kept shriveling. I don't think that one's gonna make it, Maggie said softly. Stacy jumped. She hadn't heard her come in. Oh. Maggie. I didn't. I'm sorry about what happened in there. Arthur can be difficult. Difficult. That's one word for it. Maggie leaned against the counter, next to the coffee machine that always left grounds in the pot. The break room smelled like burnt Folgers and something sweet. Somebody had left half a box of donuts open since morning. You've worked here a long time, haven't you, Stacy? 31 years this November. That's a lot of history. You must have seen a lot of people come and go. Stacy's hand paused over the watering can. Some. Yes. Maggie let the silence stretch. She'd learned, from 3 years of watching Stacy, that the woman couldn't stand quiet. It made her nervous. She always filled it with chatter about her cats or the weather. But not today. Today she just set down the watering can and looked at Maggie with eyes that were tired and scared and old. You know, don't you? Stacy whispered. About the green ledger. Maggie didn't blink. I know you've got it locked in that old filing cabinet under your desk. The one with the combination lock that you think nobody's noticed for 20 years. It was a guess. An educated one. 3 years ago, Maggie had been organizing old storage boxes in the basement when she'd found a faded memo from 1998, handwritten by Arthur, instructing Stacy to store the green records in the usual place, not with general accounting. The memo had CMCC at the bottom, Stacy's initials. She'd been the keeper of Arthur's darkest secrets for decades. How did you find out about the code? Stacy asked, her voice barely a whisper. About 0442? I found Arthur's own handwritten notes 3 years ago. In a box he forgot existed. He listed every 0442 payment from 1977 to 2002. 13 people. Names, dates, amounts. He kept it like a trophy. Like he was proud of it. Maggie pulled something from her pocket, not the payroll slip, but a small black and white photo. It showed a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and dark hair, standing in front of this very factory, back when the sign was new. Linda Kowalski's son gave this to me, Maggie said. He's 50 years old now. Still lives in the same town. Never got over what happened to his mother. Never knew why she did it. Until I called him last month and explained the 0442 system. Stacy's hand flew to her mouth. Oh God. Oh God, that poor boy. Man. He's a man now. And he's been waiting 38 years for somebody to tell the truth about what Arthur Pennington did to his mother. I promised him I would. The break room clock ticked. 4:02 p.m. Stacy, I need the green ledger. Not for money. Not for revenge. I need it so that when I walk into that emergency board meeting Arthur's going to call in about 20 minutes, I can show everybody what kind of man they've been calling a mentor and a community leader. I can't. He'll fire me. I don't know what he'll do. He won't be able to do anything to you. By tomorrow morning, Arthur Pennington won't have a company. He won't have a reputation. He might not even have his freedom. But that only happens if you give me that ledger. Tears were running down Stacy's face now, smearing her drugstore mascara. She looked at the dying Ivy, then back at Maggie. I should have done something years ago. When Linda died. When Robert Chen had his heart attack and his wife couldn't afford the funeral. When that girl in shipping miscarried from stress and Arthur docked her pay for missing 3 days. I should have said something. It's not too late. Not yet. Stacy took a deep breath, wiped her eyes with a paper napkin from the holder on the counter, and nodded. Come with me. They walked together through the quiet hallways. Most of the office had already heard rumors about the confrontation in the boardroom. People were keeping their heads down, typing faster than they needed to, suddenly very interested in their spreadsheets. At Stacy's desk, behind a row of filing cabinets and a dying fern named Phyllis, there was a squat gray safe cabinet with a rotary combination lock. Stacy knelt down, her knees popping, and spun the dial. 17 right, 42 left, 9 right. Click. The door swung open. Inside, sitting on top of a stack of old tax returns and expired contracts, was a green cloth-bound ledger. The corners were worn. The pages had gone yellow at the edges. But the handwriting inside, in fading blue ink, was Arthur Pennington's, clear as day. Maggie lifted it out carefully, like it was a newborn baby. She opened it to a random page. June 1985. Linda Kowalski. 0442, amount deducted from payroll surplus, $3,742. Note, situation resolved. Terminal. 14 other pages just like it. Names, codes, amounts. Decades of theft and silence and threats. This is it, Maggie said. Thank you, Stacy. What are you going to do now? Maggie smiled, and for the first time that day, it reached her eyes. I'm going to keep my 5 o'clock appointment. She walked back to her desk, past Frank's empty cubicle, past Arthur's closed office door where he was probably still pacing and scheming, and sat down with the green ledger resting in her lap like a promise. Her phone buzzed. A new text from Noah's babysitter. He wants to know if you can bring home pizza. We're out of cheese. Maggie typed back, tell him yes. Extra pepperoni. I'll be home by 6. Then she tucked the ledger into her worn Target purse, right next to her son's last dental bill, and waited for the clock to hit 5. At 4:55, the fluorescent lights in the hallway buzzed like they always did. Maggie walked toward the big glass doors of the conference room, the green ledger tucked under her arm like a library book. She could hear voices inside, Arthur's booming laugh trying to sound normal. Her steps were slow. No hurry. She'd waited 3 years for this. Another 5 minutes wouldn't kill her. She pushed the door open at exactly 5 o'clock. The room looked different now. The long oak table was polished to a high shine, and someone had put out the good coffee cups, the ones with the company logo that Arthur only used when the board visited. 7 people sat around the table. 3 board members, 2 senior managers from the downtown office, Frank slumped in a corner chair looking like he hadn't slept in weeks, and Arthur at the head, wearing his navy blazer with the brass buttons, the one he wore to the country club. Stacy sat in a folding chair near the door, her hands clasped so tight the knuckles were white. She was holding a manila envelope. The one they'd agreed on. Arthur stood up when Maggie walked in, spreading his arms wide like she was the guest of honor. Maggie. There she is. Come in, come in. I was just telling the board about our little misunderstanding this afternoon. A payroll glitch. Happens all the time. Frank here is going to get it straightened out first thing Monday. Maggie said nothing. She walked to the opposite end of the table and set the green ledger down. The sound it made wasn't loud, but every head in the room turned to look at it. Arthur's smile twitched. Now, Maggie, I realize you've been under a lot of stress. Your son, the dental work, the late nights. We all understand. And I want to personally assure you that whatever error caused that $900 check will be corrected, with interest. You have my word. Your word. Maggie let the two words hang in the air. Mr. Pennington, do you know how many times you've used that phrase in this building? Arthur's cheeks flushed. I beg your pardon? I counted. 137 times in the last 3 years of company memos alone. She pulled a folded sheet of paper from her purse. Every time an employee asked for a raise. Every time someone complained about missing overtime. You have my word. Then nothing. The board members exchanged glances. An older man with silver hair, Mr. Hanover, leaned forward. Young lady, if this is about a payroll dispute, there are proper channels. This isn't about payroll. Maggie opened the green ledger. The spine crackled. She flipped to the first flagged page. This is about a code. 4 numbers. 0442. Does anyone in this room recognize that number? Silence. Frank's face went gray. He looked at Arthur. Arthur's jaw was tight, but he forced a chuckle. Sounds like an old product part number. We've made thousands of parts over the years. It's not a part number. Maggie turned the ledger around so the board could see. This is a handwritten record of payments made between 1977 and 2002. 13 names. Each one with a date, an amount, and the same 4-digit code. 14 pages total. I found this book 3 years ago in the basement archive, inside a box marked Personnel Miscellany. The handwriting is yours, Mr. Pennington. Arthur stood up. This is absurd. You broke into company records? She didn't break in. Stacy's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the room. She stood up, trembling. I gave her the key to the file cabinet. This morning. Arthur stared at Stacy like she'd grown a second head. You did what? You told me 31 years ago to keep the green records separate from finance. You said if anyone ever needed to know the truth about this company, I should know where to find it. Tears were streaming down Stacy's face. I thought you meant if the government came. I never thought it would be one of us. Mr. Hanover took off his glasses. Arthur, what is this about? Nothing. Old records. She's confused. Arthur's voice had lost its boom. He was gripping the edge of the table. Maggie opened the manila envelope Stacy had handed her. She pulled out a photograph. A woman in a blue dress, standing by a Christmas tree, 2 kids beside her. She slid it across the table. Linda Kowalski. She was your bookkeeper in 1985. Code 0442. The first payment was $2,200. The last one was $3,742, dated November 11th. The note next to it says, Situation resolved. Terminal. The room was so quiet Maggie could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Linda found out you were skimming from the Employee Health Fund. Small amounts. $1 here, 50 cents there. It added up to tens of thousands of dollars over the years. You told her it was a clerical error, but she knew better. She threatened to go to the State Labor Board. This is slander, Arthur hissed. She had a son. 12 years old. A husband who needed a loan for his roofing business. A mother waiting for a green card. You told her if she ever spoke a word, you'd make sure her husband's loan was denied, her mother was deported, and her kids would never see college. You offered her money to stay quiet. She took it. And then, 6 months later, she walked into her garage and put a shotgun in her mouth. Frank made a choking sound. The board members were frozen. Her son found her. He's 41 now. He still remembers the color of the garage door. I talked to him 2 months ago. He sent me this picture. Arthur's face had gone the color of old milk. You can't prove any of this. I don't have to. Maggie pulled out the original wage stub from her purse. The $900 check. Because the code on my paycheck stub, the batch number under the date, is 0442. I've been here 8 years. Every single paycheck I've ever received from this company has had that code on it. She held it up. Why would a modern payroll system use a code from 1977? Because Frank never changed it. He just copied the template from the old manual ledgers. The same code you used to pay people you'd threatened into silence. And when my paycheck came out to $900 for a month of work, the code was right there on the bottom, like a ghost you forgot to bury. Mr. Hanover stood up. Is this true, Frank? Frank's voice cracked. He made me do it. The wage deductions, the rounding errors, the health fund. He said it was how you build wealth. He said every dollar you take from employees is a dollar the government can't tax. I just wanted a job. You idiot, Arthur whispered. No, Arthur. Mr. Hanover's face was stone. He's not the idiot. I've sat on this board for 20 years. I heard the rumors. I never asked. This is on me too. Maggie closed the ledger. The sound was final. I'm not here to sue you, Mr. Pennington. I'm not here to destroy the company. I just want what you owe me. $4,620. That's my unpaid overtime for 18 months, plus the dental bill for my son's braces. My son's been getting teased at school. He smiles with his hand over his mouth. Because I couldn't afford to fix his teeth on $900 a month. She pushed a small handwritten invoice across the table. This is all I want. Pay me, and I'll leave this ledger with Mr. Hanover. He can do whatever he wants with it. Go to the police. Bury it. I don't care. But I'm not walking out of this building without what I earned. Arthur stared at the invoice. His hands were shaking. For the first time in 40 years, he had nothing to say. Mr. Hanover took the invoice, looked at it, and nodded. Stacy, cut her a check. Right now. For every cent plus interest. He turned to Arthur. We'll discuss your future after she leaves. Stacy left and came back 5 minutes later with a check for $5,000 even. She handed it to Maggie with trembling hands. Thank you, Maggie said. She folded the check, put it in her purse, then walked to the door. She paused, her hand on the handle. You know what the real joke is, Mr. Pennington? That $900 pay stub. You've been so busy stealing pennies, you forgot the system would leave its own trail. All these years, you thought you were so smart. But the only thing that caught you was a number you were too cheap to change. She walked out. The hallway was quiet. The old clock above the break room said 5:43. Still almost 15 minutes before she told Noah she'd be home. She could make it with time left over. Maggie stopped by her old cubicle one last time. The plastic plant on her desk was dusty. The picture of Noah on his 8th birthday was still taped to the monitor. She peeled it off carefully, put it in her pocket, and took the mug with the chip on the rim. Everything else she left. 10 years of spreadsheets and coffee rings and missed lunch breaks. Not worth a single goodbye. In the parking lot, the sky was that soft gray you get in late autumn, the sun already dipping behind the strip mall across the street. Her old Honda was parked under the one tree that dropped sap all summer. The hood was sticky. She sat in the driver's seat for a minute, just breathing. The check was in her purse. Noah would get his braces. She'd find another job, something small, maybe at a dentist's office, where they needed someone who understood numbers and patience. Linda's son had said he'd write a reference letter if she ever needed one. She pulled out her phone. The screensaver was Noah with a missing front tooth, his grin wide and unashamed. No more hand over his mouth. That was the real win. Maggie dialed the pizza place first. Large pepperoni. Extra cheese. Then she called the babysitter. Tell him I'm on my way. With pizza. And a surprise. What surprise? Just tell him tomorrow he gets his biggest wish. The babysitter laughed. He's gonna be pumped. Maggie hung up and started the car. The engine turned over on the third try, like it always did. She pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. Behind her, the big yellow company sign was already beginning to flicker. By Monday, it would be gone. But that wasn't her problem anymore. She had a son waiting. A pizza to pick up. And for the first time in years, no coat on her shoulder.